I'm pretty sure. Okay, how we doing, Joe? Are we ready? Everybody ready? Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Washington day. We're here to talk about something very dear to the hearts of Washington, and that's our incredible, beautiful environment and such a beautiful day. I don't know a better day to talk about this issue. Before I make my comments, I'd like to show our respect for the Swinomish people whose land, ancestral land this is. And the Swinomish community has been a champion for environmental quality, and we appreciate their leadership. We mourn the passing of former ancestral chair Michael Clatesby, and I appreciate Chairman Steve Edwards of the tribe being here today, who will make some comments. We're also joined by Matthew Hepner, who's Executive Director of the IBEW, the Certified Electrical Workers of Washington, whose leadership on the subject has been phenomenal, as you'll learn when you hear him. They will also deliver remarks. We have Representative Alex Ramo, who's doing some super work in Olympia right now, and Christina Bayanian of the Sheet Metal Workers Local 66. We also have Michelle Simmons from SilFab, who is going to make some comments demonstrating some of the job creation opportunities of what we're talking about today. So today we are here to call to action Washingtonians against the existential threat of climate change. Carbon pollution and climate change, which threatens the most basic fundamental tenets of what we hold dear here in Washington State. I'm here today with these beautiful blue waters that are now threatened by carbon pollution and climate change. I'm here today in a state with some of the most beautiful forests that are burning down repeatedly because of climate change. I'm here today for the children that are breathing smoke from forest fires in the summer so they can't go outside. I'm here today for the children that are suffering an epidemic of asthma from pollution, from carbon pollution. And we are here today to call the Washington State Legislature to action to stop climate change, to attack carbon pollution, and to give Washingtonians what they deserve, which is clean air. And today we know how important that is. We know that COVID is not the only crisis we have today. We have a climate crisis today, just as existential as COVID. And as we are defeating COVID with science and confidence and action, we have to take similar action against the climate crisis. And we know we can do this. The people who are behind me today are going to talk to you about the way to do this by reducing carbon pollution and by creating clean energy jobs across the state of Washington. And this is a moment none too soon. The scientific community has told us that these waters are imperiled behind me because of climate change, because of carbon pollution. Climate change is making our waters too hot for salmon to survive. Climate change is making this water too acidic for salmon to survive. And what we hold dear of the iconic orca is now threatened in part because of the forces of climate change and ocean acidification, both caused by the virus of carbon pollution. This is a day to call the legislators to action to attack this virus of carbon pollution in our state. And we're here to support two bills which give us the ability to do just that. And both of these bills work in tandem. First, our Clean Fuel Standard. This is House Bill 1091. Second, the Climate Commitment Act, Senate Bill 5126. The Clean Fuel Standard will give us cleaner fuels and cleaner air. The Climate Commitment Act will limit the amount of carbon pollution that is befouling our skies and create revenues that can be used to help our communities become more resilient and put people to work in construction projects across the state of Washington. These two bills are necessary to meet our state's goals. Our legislature in the last few years have created a commitment, a legally binding commitment to reduce carbon pollution. And unless these two bills pass, that commitment will not be met. So we are here to call our legislators to follow the desires of Washingtonians to give us cleaner air and less climate pollution. And I believe we can get this job done. Just a moment about these two bills. The Clean Fuel Standard basically will assure that Washingtonians have cleaner, less polluting fuels. It will support jobs and innovation in clean fuel production. From construction and the operation of biofuel plants, refineries, from source material from farms to forests, to new methods of making our transportation system less carbon intensive. If we adopt this standard, by 2030, we will expect that we will reduce carbon emissions by 2.7 million metric tons annually compared to where we are now. And basically, it will give a good deal for Washingtonians that you will be able to get access to cleaner fuels and less polluting fuels. We know this works. We know this works because it's in place in other states, including California, where it has been very successful. We know these things work. Both of these bills are in place up and down the west coast of the United States, and it is time for Washington State to join California, Oregon, and British Columbia in action against carbon pollution in transportation. The second bill, the Climate Commitment Act, is a cap and invest program. It will cap the amount of carbon pollution that can go into our skies. It will generate revenues of polluters who will have to pay for that pollution. This is a polluter pays bill. The polluter will pay for the pollution, and that's the way it ought to be. And those dollars can then be spent for projects across the state of Washington to make us more resilient, to help transportation, and a host of other items. We know that this bill works. It's in place in California, and it's working. These are tried and true measures, and this is one of the great benefits of Washington of these bills. We don't have to be the first. These rockets have been invented, and we know that they work. But we need action this year in Washington State. We can't wait any longer. Now, I had Kathy Pittis just handed me a little Christmas ornament. She's a port commissioner here. This is a handmade wool orca. And I think this stands for why we're here. If our great-grandchildren are going to be able to see these orcas, we have to act on climate change, and we have to act this year. And we are capable of doing this. These bills have broad support in the public. They have broad support in the legislature, and there is no reason they should not pass this year. So if you want to see orcas in the Washington waters in the next century, let's call the legislature to stand up against climate change. And with that, I'm going to yield to Swinomish Chairman Steve Edwards. Mr. Chairman.
Governor Inslee, Mr. Hepner, Representative Rammel, and other guests, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Steve Edwards. I'm the chairman of the Swinomish tribe. My traditional name is Yalakabut, and we would just like to welcome you to our homelands. Our people have, and our ancestors have traveled these waters and these lands. We've had many camps around Whidbey, Fidalgo Island, and the Swinomish people have hunted, fished, and gathered, traded, and lived in these lands and these waters since time immemorial. And we've also been out in the San Juan Islands, the Skagit River. You know, we've gathered in the mountains, the plains around us. The Swinomish people have cared and lived and called these lands home forever. And today we still remain as fishing people. Many of our families continue to fish and commercially, and this is how they make their living. Our tribe operates a shellfish farm just on the south end of our golf course down here in Smilk Bay, and we sell our shellfish there and in our convenience store and on our fish plant. So if you ever get an opportunity to come out and buy some of our shellfish, it's it's a treat. So, and salmon have always been the center of our social, cultural, and ceremonial life. We've in every community gathering or family gathering, salmon or seafood have always been at our table. Salmon sustains us physically, mentally, and spiritually. Today, because of a couple hundred years of industrialization and other human activities, many of these things we hold dear to us are at risk. The pollution our species has released into the atmosphere is threatening the planet that sustains us and all of the living things on Earth. If we do not act on this, our children, our grandchildren will inherit a planet much different from the one we enjoy today. Increase of forest fires, storm damages, ocean acidification, and species decline are all happening around us today. Every day it seems that there is some news story about how catastrophic effects the climate changes are affecting our planet and our lives. I'm here today to thank Governor Inslee for his dedication to changing how we as a state and as a species live so that our planet can survive. Anyone who knows Governor Inslee knows that he has been committed to this work for decades. He is no Johnny-come-lately when it comes to raising the alarm and leading the way to address climate change. The Simmons tribe and all other tribes in Washington state have worked with him in the legislature, in Congress, now as a governor, to take action on climate change. We are all grateful for his partnership and proud of the government-to-government relationship we have today. This foundation is respectful collaboration among sovereigns make it possible for us to bring our collective expertise to bear on tackling these challenges. When it comes to climate change, we cannot wait. As we speak, our shellfish populations are declining because of ocean acidification. Every summer, forest fires rage our state. They used to only be in eastern Washington. They used to be small. They used to be short-lived. Now the entire west coast of North America, from BC to California, on both sides of the mountains are regularly on fire during the summer months. Today our salmon runs are a shadow of what they were even when my parents and grandparents were fishing in these waters around us. I can't be certain my grandchildren will be able to fish as I have. And if we don't recover wild salmon, the future of our endangered orca whales is not at all certain. I think that we can say the Salish Sea orca can only survive if we recover salmon on the Skagit River. We cannot let our relatives down. So once again, I applaud the governor for his work. I thank him for his partnership, and I urge the legislator to pass these important pieces of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor, for your leadership on these issues, and thank you, Chairman, for hosting this on your people's lands. It's greatly appreciated, especially on such a important thing that we're all facing. My name is Matthew Hepner. I'm a journeyman wireman. I'm also the executive director of the Certified Electrical Workers of Washington, representing over 10,000 IBEW electricians. I live in East Wenatchee myself, and I remember when the fires came through Wenatchee a few years ago, and the ash was falling from the sky, and it puts it into clear perspective that the climate is definitely changing, and we have to adapt to it. At the legislature right now, there's two very strong policies that are really capable of making change. The LCFS and the Cap and Invest programs are the thing that I like most about these policies is they're market changers. They're market drivers. They drive an economy, a new economy that we're missing out on. There was it was called the Green Apple, the proposed Green Apple project, which was supposed to be sited not too far from here. It relocated to a different state, a state that had an LCFS. So we are missing out on these jobs because we don't have these policies. We don't have that market engine to spur that economic growth here in Washington State. There's a new proposed project in Grays Harbor, which is an aviation biofuel facility, which will create over 700 family wage jobs. And those are the kind of jobs we really want to bring home to Washington. Those are the kind of jobs that you can build a family on. Those are middle-class family wage jobs. Also, in the LCFS, there's a lot of work to be done in electrification. Electrification, especially in this budget cycle, we're looking at massive investments in ferry electrification. Again, those are going to be family wage, middle-class oriented jobs with pensions and health care. Those are the kind of jobs we really want. It's not fast food work. I mean, these are real family-sustaining jobs, and those are really what we need to get after. And that's what I think the governor's done a great job in leading about, is bringing those family wage jobs here to Washington, driving the economy and the markets to a place where we can feed our families. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Simmons, and I'm representing Silfab Solar. We are a solar panel manufacturing facility. And I just want to say that we were absolutely delighted at the invitation from Governor Inslee to discuss clean energy technology produced right here in the Pacific Northwest. With our first U.S. production facility operating off the Bellingham waterfront and additional expansions considered in various regions, there's no doubt that renewable energy is growing and career opportunities are plentiful. So plentiful, in fact, that the solar industry could utilize 4 times the current job growth every year for the next 10 years to meet the current administration's goals and incentives. Clean energy is creating jobs right here in the Pacific Northwest. With our next U.S. plant scheduled to open in the spring and summer of 2021, we're committed to our local communities, seeking out partnerships with the Skagit Economic Development Team, local technical colleges, and the Ajax Apprenticeship Program. We're supporting education and development in skilled trades to develop career opportunities within Washington State. The training and development of a skilled workforce is a critical element to the success of any industry's longevity, and continued investments in clean energy can have economic and environmental benefits in Washington State and across the U.S. So with our second plant opening in the Skagit Valley, we are excited to offer opportunities to Pacific Northwest communities. We're leading in automated solar manufacturing in North America. We're leveraging 35 years of experience in the solar industry. And those in our community who are ready to be part of a growing, innovative, and diverse team, we encourage you to learn more about our operations and become part of the Silfab team. Thank you.
Yeah, Michelle's second plant is going to be in Burlington, and how many employees do you think you'll have to start with there?
By May, we will have about 100, and we will expand over the next 12 months.
So this is what this is about: defeating climate change and creating clean energy jobs, including at Silfab. And both of these bills essentially drive investment into clean energy. They create opportunities for consumers, but they create opportunities for jobs as well. And Steve is so articulate about this. We have to understand what we have in Washington. We have enlightened leadership in the union movement that understands where these jobs can be and are right now. And I so appreciate Steve's leadership in this regard. He gets it, where these jobs of the future and the present are going to be. And they're right here in Washington in clean energy. And also glue. So with that, we're happy to stand for your questions. Any questions?
Governor, what do you think the main obstacles are with regard to trying to get this legislation passed? Clearly you're here, you want to speak about it, and you're passionate about it, and you believe it has to happen, but what are you worried about in terms of obstacles?
Well, fear. People have fear that somehow we can't innovate our way out of this problem, that we don't have solar panels that will work. Guess what? They work great. We're manufacturing some of the best solar panels in the world right here in Washington State. That somehow wind energy doesn't work. Guess what? We have a multi-billion-dollar industry in wind turbines right here in the state of Washington. Some people say that energy storage doesn't work. We're now developing some of the most rapidly improving battery storage in the world today. We have the opportunity to do in clean energy in Washington State what we've done in software, what we've done in online retail. This is the future of Washington State if we will grasp it. But we have to grasp it. And we have to tell climate change, we are not going to surrender to climate change. Our children are too precious to us. Our waters are too precious. Our forests are too precious. And we're going to use our noodle to use science to solve this problem, just like we are against COVID. Now, I mentioned COVID because obviously this has got our focus right now. It's one of the reasons I've come today. But we can't take our eye off the ball of this other crisis, which is a crisis that might be a little slower than COVID, but it'll be every bit as devastating to our families and our society. And that's why I've come today, so we keep our eye on the ball of defeating climate change. And by the way, these bills have substantial support. The Clean Fuel Standard has passed the House of Representatives. The Cap and Invest bill has passed one of the committees in the Senate, and the Clean Fuel Standard will pass another committee in the Senate today, presumably. So we do have momentum on these bills, but we need the legislature to produce. It is a fair expectation of Washingtonians that the state legislature will stand up against climate change this year.
Governor, I'm glad you brought up COVID because I did want to ask you about what we heard from the CDC director yesterday, talking about impending doom. And I want to know your reaction to that, number one. And then number two, what we're going to do, if anything, differently in our state with regard to eligibility for vaccines.
Right. Well, listen, we have tremendous confidence in this vaccine. Our vaccine rollout, we're now over 3 million doses in our state. It has proven to be super effective, over 95% effective. We have such a powerful thing in this vaccine that people are now getting in their arms. But we do have to understand that we are seeing a rise in some of our cases in the state of Washington, which is very concerning. And we have to understand this. Let's just dispel that, thank you. We have to understand that this is a race between the vaccine and the variants. And we want to win that race. And the way to win that race is everybody get vaccinated as soon as you can and wear a mask anytime you're in public in the interim. And we need to keep doing that. We need to be cautious around other people. And if we'll do that, we'll have a fighting chance of winning this race. But the president, on down, has made it very clear that we have to be careful while we're getting these vaccines in people's arms. As far as changes in our prioritization, we look at this on a daily basis. So we start a new tranche, so people with comorbidities today and people with disabilities will now be eligible. Some other their workforce and construction otherwise will be eligible today. So we'll be looking at this on a daily basis. Right now, the next tranche would be May 1st to everyone. There's a possibility that could move up if we have a more rapid pace of dosages delivered to us in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So there is a possibility that could move up. We have not made that decision at the moment.
Are you considering younger adults getting the vaccine sooner? We're seeing across the country 30-year-olds, more people that are getting COVID that are younger. Maybe we did this backwards. Is it time to reevaluate and consider giving the vaccine, making the eligibility, or making younger folks a priority?
No, we've made a good scientifically based decision. And as you know, we have saved thousands of lives in Washington because we made basis on science. We made decisions based on science. And the science is very clear that older people, people with comorbidities, have the vast majority of these deaths. Over about 90% of the deaths are people over the age of 60 and those with comorbidities. We have to do those people first. We want to save lives. That's our basic goal. So this was clearly the right decision. It's one of the reasons we have such a low death toll in Washington state. Now we're going to do the people with comorbidities, people with double lung transplants and cancer and the like. Clearly we need to get those people vaccinated. Now the younger folks, they need to wear masks and stop partying all night irresponsibly. And that's something that's a problem. We have an outbreak in Whitman County right now, in part because in the college community. So we're calling on the young people to help out here for the next couple months and be careful so we can keep your elders alive. Other questions? Yes?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I was wondering why you believe that the cap and trade program is better than a straight carbon tax. And then a second part is, I've heard that, you know, you've been in collaboration with a company like BP in forming this policy, and I was wondering if you've talked to Shell and Marathon. Thank you.
Yeah, the question was about why I think this cap and invest makes sense. And it makes sense because it has a cap. It has a binding limit. It has a concrete ceiling that we cannot allow polluters to exceed. And it is the only plan that has that, as opposed to just a carbon price. A carbon price has some virtues in that it's simple and understandable, but it does not have a binding limitation on pollution. And fundamentally, that's what we're after here, is to reduce pollution. This is shown to be an effective policy because of that cap, because it is a legal prohibition against excess pollution. And I believe it is the most powerful instrument to actually achieve that. It also has the benefit of being able to pass the legislature this year. And that is important, to actually be able to get legislation through. And it has every prospect of being able to do that. And I feel good about the progress we can make. It has also been shown to be a job creator and has not resulted in big spikes in fuel prices. The experience in California has been quite dramatic in this regard, that it has been efficient in limiting carbon and not increasing fuel prices. And frankly, there's a lot of propaganda from some of the other polluting companies that just aren't recognizing that truth and that reality. The truth will set you free, and the truth is a cap and invest system, properly calibrated, reduces pollution, creates jobs, and does not result in dramatic spikes. This is the reality. We like to make decisions based on reality. As far as speaking to some of the other companies, yes, we've had communications with them, and we're sure they're going to see the light.
I think we've got time for maybe one more question if there's one left.
Any other questions? Anybody else want to add anything?
I was curious, Governor, just about the Biden administration yesterday announcing the wind zone, the wind zone, and along the East Coast, and if there are any discussions about with the West Coast, with the Biden administration with regard to that.
Well, yes, we do believe there is, well, we know that there is huge wind potential off the West Coast. It is a very stable source of energy. And I'm really glad that we're making progress on the East Coast. I appreciate the President's leadership on this. He's doing the right thing by expanding the opportunity to create these jobs. These are great jobs to build these wind turbines off the East Coast. We can do it in the West Coast, but we have to have floating platforms. Our water is deeper. So we have to do a little work to make sure that we can build these floating platforms that can withstand the elements. And that has happened, but we need some further development in that regard. We have been thinking about ways to permit and places to actually allow that type of project off our coastline, because it's an enormous source. What the President proposed yesterday would enough to power 10 million homes with just the ones he's proposed to date. And the wind turbine technology continues to dramatically improve. The blades now are expanding dramatically and they become much more efficient. And wind, as you know today, is one of the cheapest source, even competitor and cheaper than coal-based power. So it's a very delightful source of energy.
Any closing remarks?
No, I just hope people will express themselves in the next few days. People who care about their kids not getting asthma, express themselves to the legislature. For those who care about having salmon in our rivers, express yourselves. For those who don't want our forests all burned down, express yourselves. We hope people share their sentiment that this is a state worth fighting for. This is a state not going to give up against climate change. And if people speak up in the next few days, we're going to get these bills through, and Washington State's going to win its great battle against climate change. I feel good about that. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. You were great, as usual. Good to see you. Good to see you. Can we get a picture taken? Yes, sir. Let's pose. Somebody got a camera here?
Yeah.